Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, boys and girls. So let's talk about first hop redundancy protocols. We're going to learn a little bit about basically the fundamentals of HSRP, VRRP, and GLBP concepts, configurations, and a little lab demonstration, not too depth into the terms because later on we will be doing some packet tracing labs. So just a little, a brief introduction per se, a brief introduction. So let's start with the first slide here. And this is the agenda that we have for today. Why we need first hop redundancy protocols, FHRP, Cisco proprietary, that is HSRP, the IETF standard, which is VRRP, Cisco proprietary with load balancing is actually GLBP. We have a comparison, a configuration, a validation, and verification, and some lab exercises and troubleshooting that we will cover in the packet trace section, but we will just take a brief a summary and an introduction to them in this lesson per se. Okay, let's go. Let's go. So, why do we need FHRP? Hosts typically have a single default gateway configured. If that gateway fails, connectivity to other network is lost. So connectivity to the other networks will be lost. FHRP provides gateway redundancy. Multiple routers act as a virtual gateway, as one single virtual gateway, and it ensures high availability and resilience in enterprise networks. Okay, here we have the following. So we have a router 1 over here, a router 2 over there, and we have a layer 2 switch. Usually that's the way we draw those fellows, a layer 2 switch. And they are connected each other. They are connected. So that's basically it. So this topology has two routers. It provides a virtual default gateway via HSRP, VRRP, and there is also the possibility of having GLBP as well. We're going to study why this is important, why it's necessary to have virtual connectivity, a backup connection in order to have redundancy most of the time. So we will cover the explanation of this very, very soon. Let me just clear the drawing and let's go ahead and take a look at the explanation on why two routers will provide the default gateway with these protocols. So, um, okay, here we have the following. Here we have hot, hot standby router protocol, that is the Cisco proprietary HSRP overview. Okay, so routers will form an HSRP group with one active and one standby router. Virtual IP address used by hosts as default gateway, and preemption allows higher priority routers to take over. So that's basically a brief introduction on why we need this HSRP configuration in order to have an active and a standby router, in order to have that full redundancy. The virtual IP address is used by hosts as a default gateway, and the pre preemption is preemption. That preemption allows a higher priority for routers to take over. Let's go ahead and see an example about this. Let me go ahead and clear the drawings. Let me use the other panel field just in case I need it with the red color. And let me clear this for a moment. Let's move on. So this is an example. And how do we configure this preemption? Okay, so basically, let me use a black color here so you can see it better. First thing we do, we go to the interface. So we have there, interface gigabit 00 IP address. Then we do 192.168.1.2. And what else? What else do we have here, guys? What else? Let me let me go back here. Actually, let me clear this one because for some reason, let me just start over. So we have the interface gigabit 00. We have the IP address for that specific interface, 192.168.1.2. And this is a 255.255.255.0 at the end. Now, be careful because it's actually a 1.2. After this, what else do we have? We have standby 1, standby 1, IP, 192.168.1.1. Then we have a standby 1 IP address of one that is actually a priority. So the second option is standby 1 priority. And we have 110. And finally, we have the standby 1 preempt. So let me just move this a little bit. I need to organize this better. And that's pretty much it. And that's the configuration. There you have it, boys and girls. That's the way that we configure HSRP. And this is an example of configuring this HSRP protocol. Now, we will cover this later in a packet tracer lab in order to fully understand how to add it in an interface, how the way it behaves per se. So we will look into this in a moment. For now, I just want you to have the big picture of which commands and how do we start adding this configuration in our routers. Let me go ahead and clear this. Let me clear this for a moment. Let's move forward. Okay, now we have the overview of VRRP. Let me change the color for a moment here. Let's use a blue color for now. VRRP is the virtual, there you have it, virtual router redundancy protocol. IETF standard RFC 5798 is very similar to HSRP, but open standard. One master router forwards traffic, others are backups. Virtual router ID, VRID, identifies the VRRP group. And that's a little bit about some of the characteristics and definition of VRRP and the overview that we have prepared for you guys so far. Let's go ahead and move on. Now we're going to configure an example of VRRP. Same thing, we are configuring this in, let's just say is router 1 per se. Let me just add router 1 here for a moment. This is the one, this is the configuration. Let me just do this. Let's do a config. And there you start. You start with interface gigabit 00. Then we have the same. So let me just copy this and paste it. Then we have the IP address. IP address 192.168.1.3. Then 255.255.255.0. This is /34 IP address. Then we have the same pretty much. We have to copy this and paste it there. And VRRP is the next command. And we go with 10 IP. Then 192.168.1.1. Then the same thing. We copy and paste this. And this is the VRRP 10 priority. Priority in this case. We have 120. And then finally, we are still configuring in the same router And this is going to be VRRP, VRRP10 preempt. And that's basically an example of a possible configuration for VRRP in a specific router. There you have it. Now, we're going to learn a little bit about GLBP and an overview. So let's go ahead and clear this drawing for a moment. You can actually take a screenshot real quick. See this one to have the hand there. Let me just clear it for now and let's move forward. So some of the definitions for GLBP is that, let me just highlight those for you guys. Let me use light blue color for now. So gateway load balancing protocol is Cisco proprietary. So it provides, and let me just activate the camera for a moment. So you're gonna actually have what I am explaining here. It provides redundancy and load balancing among multiple routers. One active virtual gateway AVR assigns roles to active virtual forwarders, that is AVFs. Different hosts can use different APS for traffic distribution. And those are basically some of the specific characteristics for GLBP. Let's move on. Let's move on. Let's go ahead and clear the drawing. Let's continue with the example. And now we're just going to add it as it is. Let's just imagine the following first. Let's imagine we are configuring router 2, R2, but we're just going to add the same commands. We are not going to add the config option and all that privilege mode. We're just going to add the specific commands. So imagine we are already in configuration mode and we are just starting like interface gigabit 00. Then you have the IP address 192.168.1.4. And then we have the 255.255.255.0. And then we have the GLBP 5 IP 192 and 168 dot let's go 192 168 at 1.1, and then we have the same GLBP 5. We have the priority 110. Then we have the GLBP 5 preamp, and that's it. There you have it. This is the configuration of a brief example on how to configure per se. Let's say we are in router 2 or router 4, and we're configuring the GLBP with the IP address, the GLBP IP address, then the priority, the preamp, and that's it. That's basically the configuration that we will do for a GLBP example. So let's go ahead and clear the board and let's move forward. And now we have a comparison between these FHRP protocols. We have the feature, the HSRP, VRRP, and GLBP. Standardization for the HSRP, we have Cisco proprietary. For the VRRP, we have, this is open standard, IETF. And GLBP is also Cisco proprietary. Redundancy, yes, of course. This one, and this one, all of them give us redundancy. They provide us with redundancy. Load balancing, HSRP, it doesn't support load balancing. VRP supports some load balancing, but it's actually limited. And finally, GLBP give us that load balancing in case we need it. Finally, the router's role. For HSRP, we have active standby. For VRRP, we have master backup. And for GLBP, we have AVG, AVFs. That's basically for GLBP. Great, great. Let's take a look at some of the validation commands that we will go into deep practice when we do the packet tracer labs. But for now, let's just become familiar with them. We have HSRP, the show standby. That is the command that we will be applying in case we are configuring HSRP in our devices, our routers. We have the show VRRP, and that is for the VRRP protocol. And then if we decided to configure GLBP in our devices, routers, we have to run this show GLBP in order to validate the configurations that we created before, that we were doing before. We can use a ping and a trace route, those commands, in order to complete a failover when that is eventually required. So those are other additional options that we have. And let's clear the board and continue moving on. This is an example. We will probably be covering some of these in future scenarios with Packet Tracer, but let me just change the color for a moment. And this is some of the configurations that we can do. Configure HSRP on two routers and test the failover. Configure VRRP and observe election process. That's another option for lab exercises. And finally, configure GLBP and verify load balancing. That is the last scenario of labs. And then we can do the test preemption and the router priorities when required. Okay, let's clear the board. Let me select the pencil with the red color for now. And let me clear this. Let's move on. Finally, we have a summary of the best practices for FHRP. It provides redundancy for the default gateway. HSRP. So all of these protocols that we have studied today, those are FHRPs, and they provide redundancy for the default gateway. HSRP and GLBP are Cisco proprietary. VRRP is an open standard. It can be used by other vendors like Juniper, Arista Networks, Meraki. GLBP adds load balancing for efficient use of resources. And finally, always verify configurations and simulate a failover. So let's go ahead and do the following. Let's go ahead and close the class for today. I will see you, boys and girls, at the next lesson. It's been a pleasure. I'll see you at the top of success. Take care. And my name is Cesar. Until next time, I will see you around. Take care.